Hey guys, it's Michael here from FlySight. In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the switch on a FlySight. The first thing you want to do is remove the two screws on the back of the unit. And then open the case and remove the circuit board. As much as possible when you're handling the circuit board, you want to handle it by the edges like this, rather than touching all of the components, and it'll prevent some damage. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to unhook the battery. Now this is a newer unit that has the connector on the battery, so it's really easy to disconnect. If it's an older unit with the battery soldered in place here, you'll need to desolder at least one of those leads, pull it away, and wrap it with electrical tape, just so it doesn't accidentally short against something else. For these connectors, though, you just put your thumbnail under the front of the connector, lift it up, and it comes straight off. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to disassemble the switch as far as we can while it's still on the circuit board, and it'll make it a lot easier to remove it. So what we can do is we can use a pair of side cutters and get underneath the metal on the switch here and kind of pry it up and away. There we go. And we can do the same thing with these two flaps on the front side of the switch. One. And two. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, using the side cutters again, cut up in the corner of the switch here to remove the top part of the sheet metal. And then I'm going to cut on the opposite side, same thing. Get rid of that piece of metal. And there'll be some guts in the switch that may just fall away as you do that. That's good. You can get rid of those. So now what you can see is the switch is made up of these three pins on the inside, plus the two big supporting things on the outside, and all five of those are soldered on the bottom. There's this brown circuit board that holds the three pins together. And I'm going to try to break that apart with the side cutters before we go any further, just to make it easier to remove those three pins. So I'll just make a couple of snips, and here I'm being careful not to damage the circuits that are right around the switch. I'm going to grab a pair of tweezers and get under there just a little bit. There we go. And these pieces of circuit board will just kind of, pieces of the brown circuit board in the switch will just come away, and then we'll be able to pull these three pins out separately. There we go. Okay, so now you can see we have those three completely separate pins, the two pieces of sheet metal remaining on the outside, and we're going to remove all of those one at a time. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this FlySight into my vise. And I'm going to use my soldering iron. The temperature is set to 650 Fahrenheit, and I'm using a a nice wide tip on the soldering iron, just so we can get really good heat transfer into the board. So I'll clean the tip and I'll put just a little bit of solder on it again to help with heat transfer. I'm going to grab a small pair of pliers, and what I'll do is I'll grab one of these pieces of sheet metal from the side, and then we'll heat the back side of that pin. And you don't want to pull too hard on the sheet metal. I'm going to add a little bit more solder there. You don't want to pull too hard on the sheet metal because if you pull too hard, you'll actually pull the plating right out of the circuit board. So it'll come out easily once it's heated up enough. Let's get some good contact on there. There we are. You can see it wiggles and it comes straight out. We'll do the same thing with the other side. So grab this guy and try to apply heat right onto the pin on the back. He wiggles a little bit, comes right out. And same thing with these 3 pins in the middle. Sometimes what I find is if you heat up the pin before you grab it, it works a little bit better just because the pliers can kind of act as a heat sink and pull heat away from the solder joint. Second one, pulls straight away. And the third one, again, it just about falls out. Okay, so now we have all 5 pins removed. What we need to do, I'm going to remove this antenna. To remove the antenna, you just put your fingernails underneath this connector, pull it straight away from the board, maybe wiggle it a little bit, and then the antenna will come away. And that way it won't get in our way with the soldering iron. Now I'm going to clean the solder out of those holes. There are a couple of ways you can do it. One, you may be able to do it with solder wick, which is this stuff. I prefer to do it with a solder sucker, which is this guy here. So what I'll do is I'll put the solder sucker under the board, right on one of the holes. I'll apply some heat on the top, wait for the solder to melt, and you can see it pulls the solder right out of the hole. Let's try the same thing for this other one. What I'm going to do here, that one didn't come out. Sometimes if you're having trouble removing solder from the hole, it actually helps to add a little bit of solder. So I'll put some more solder on my soldering iron. And again, I will put the solder sucker under there. We'll heat up from the top. There we go. I'll bump the camera. I don't think we quite got that one, but I'm going to try a different one. That worked. might have worked. Let's try this last one once more. Maybe. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so the 2 holes on the ends are definitely good. And you know what? These other guys, I don't know that I actually got any of them. No, actually I got all of them, I think. They look good from the bottom side. Let's try installing a new switch. So get the vise out of the way for a moment. So I'm going to take the new switch and I'm going to put it in the correct side. I'm going to line it up with the holes and I should be able to push it straight down into place. Yeah, that worked just great. So those holes were actually clean enough. If you have any trouble pushing the switch in, if it gives you some resistance, it might be that there's still solder in the holes. Again, you can try a solder wick to remove extra solder, or if it's really stubborn, try feeding some fresh solder into it and then sucking it out again. Usually that'll do it. So now I'm going to grab my vise again. And I'm going to put the board in. And using the same tip still, I'm going to apply some heat to the pad, a little bit of solder, and that's it. I'm going to turn the switch to the outside, just so that we don't turn the FlySight on immediately when we put the battery back in. It's a little bit awkward to solder from this angle. All right, that should be it for the soldering. So I'm going to put the vise away, and then I'll put the antenna back on. To reinstall the antenna, you want to take the connector with the black side facing toward the board, and you're going to put it right on top of the connector on the board and push straight on until it clicks. And there's this little curl, so I usually take these antennas, pass them around themselves like that, and then in there, and that'll give you this one turn of the cable. And then we will plug the power back in. For these connectors, you want to put the back side down first and then push the front side down and it'll click. So again, let me just remove that. I take the back side of the connector near the wires, kind of pull it, place it straight down, and then I push the front side of the connector down, and now it's mated properly. And that's it to reassemble the FlySight. Put the board back into the case, put the back side of the case on, and put the 2 screws back in. That's about it. Thanks for watching.